have approved, blah, blah, blah. Окей.
Да? Ну, тогда поменяй этот LinkedIn, ты сразу можешь его заэдитить. Remove. Тогда куда делаем? На Facebook на наш или на
Я
YouTube?
думаю, что можно просто как бы пока, ну, можно на Facebook. Ой,
Давай
на
на Facebook. На Facebook или YouTube?
На YouTube.
Так.
Okay, so I guess we are ready to go, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Our today's topic is building a tech startup from market validation to development. And we will cover the basics of launching a new tech startup and give the step-by-step guide on some major parts like market validation and research development planning. I'm Ekaterina, CMO and partner at FIS, and today's webinar is co-organized with SPRO, our partners. A little bit about our companies. So FIS is a hub between startups and investors in blockchain. It is a decentralized advisory firm with a global network of professionals. FIS is bridging the gap between startups investors relationships by assisting startups with venture building and assuring smooth post-investment process to investors. SPRO is an innovative software development and consulting partner. They help technology-based startups to be flexible, adaptive, and mobile in a fast-changing world. SPRO carries businesses from concept to market-ready brand. So we will have a Q&A section at the end of the presentation, so feel free to drop questions in chat or comments. And I will now pass my word to Elena, CEO and founder at FIS, so she can tell us more about herself and market validation guidelines for tech startups.
Thank you, Katerina, for the introduction. So hello, everyone. My name is Elena Obukhova. I'm founder and CEO of FASF and also co-founder of two more projects, Make Event and CryptoTP. At FASF, as Katerina already mentioned, we're bridging the gap between startups and investors, helping projects with their journey. And product market fit is one of the crucial aspects of the project development. And being a founder myself, I also understand how challenging it can be. Thus, I'm glad to share more insights on this topic. Let me just start the presentation. So today we're going to learn how and why you should validate your project. And I would like to ask, so why is market validation so important? And let me share some simple equation. Right product plus right market. What can it be? It's actually an opportunity. Yes, it's opportunity. It's not project success, because project success will include more variables such as team and timing. And going back to the right product and right market, I would like to say that there are a few things that can happen to the project if they didn't do a right market validation. And the first scenario would be wrong product on the right market. When you come to the market, you wanted to go at the first place with the solutions that they don't actually need. And even it might seem that you're solving the problem on this particular market and people would like this product, but this bug can be a price of the product, the name, their UX, or might be like their project in general. So it's very important to understand what is wrong with your product, or maybe this market is not the best fit. And the next will be the right product at the wrong market. You might have a perfect product that you're trying to sell, but you're selling it to wrong people. You need to clearly understand your target audience before you're going to the market with your solution. And the worst would be going with the wrong product to the wrong market. And this can happen when you're selling your own product at the market where you don't have any expertise. And this will be very harmful because you will not be able to collect any feedback. So you will not even know what's wrong with your product. So that can lead to the failure. All three scenarios are quite harmful for the project, because you will end up with many resources wasted, and that's why it's very important to do the market validation beforehand. And here I would like to tell you that you might think that any of those cases, even if they happen, you can still do some changes and launch your project to the market. And here I would like to cover what things you have to keep in mind to understand why you still think have to do the market validation beforehand. And the first would be time. So you will waste a lot of time on preparing a dream product or a dream MVP, and later it appears that it wasn't a good fit for market. To prevent it, you should act quickly. Launch now with something simpler, with some basic features, and collect the feedback. The second would be money. You also waste a lot of money for a time period, whether it's the development of the dream product or other relative costs. So you should spend wisely. Develop a step-by-step approach to understand how you're going to build your product. Find the core and concentrate on this core. I believe that Igor will cover more about this topic, so I can go straight to the third point, that is energy. You also spend a lot of energy on the development and preparation of the product. And when it appears that this product wasn't a good fit for a market, you end up demotivated. And when your team spends so much energy and they turn out to be demotivated, it will be hard to go back on track and continue building. So it's better to just avoid the energy wasting and time wasting and money wasting, and start building step by step and collect this feedback to make sure that you are going to the right market. Now I would like to cover a few case studies that can support what I mentioned earlier. And first would be Twitch. Back then it was Justin TV. So it was a live streaming of live of Justin. So they only had one channel, and as you can see, their video quality wasn't ideal back then. And but the team started really small, right? They concentrated on the core. They wanted to try if the market will actually like the project, and maybe even they didn't have any idea of a live streaming website back then. Maybe they just started trying it with Justin, but it worked. They saw that the market is actually interested and that they can add more streaming channels to it. And that's how Twitch started appearing. And now we know Twitch with so many different live streams, because our team started really small and had a step-by-step approach. The next would be Airbnb. And here is one of the earliest websites. At that moment, they didn't even have a map where you can see where apartments located. They didn't have any filters or any other options to sort out the apartments. No fancy features. They didn't even have a payment system integrated, and hosts had to take cash. But what Airbnb understood is that in order to succeed, they have to build a network of apartment owners of the hosts. And that was the core of their project. It wasn't the development of a website. It was actually their network behind. And they spent some time on developing this network, reaching out to hosts. And that's how Airbnb succeeded. They understood what is the basic things that they need to achieve in order to succeed. And that was the network of the hosts. And later on, they started, of course, do a lot of adjustments to the website, and we can see Airbnb like completely different nowadays. But that supports my point about acting quickly and concentrating on the core of your business. You may know the project Weebly. It's e-commerce and website builder. The project spent 18 months to find the product market fit. It might seem very long, right? And many people might have given up, but as a team, they actually put a lot of efforts. They were kept trying, and trying until they actually found their market fit. And later on, they were sold for 365 USD for US dollars million, with 50 million users acquired. So how to be smart with a budget? Again, you should start with a core. You should find the basic feature of your product, like Airbnb did with the hosts network, and start launching. You launch with a small thing. You're going to your target audience and you start the conversation. You talk to them, you ask what they would like to change, if they would like to pay for this solution. You get as much feedback as possible. And then you switch into next step when you analyze this feedback. You try to understand what is wrong with your project, or what is wrong with the market you're trying to go, and what are other features you have to change or you have to add. And after knowing this, you can continue building. So this should be a continuous ongoing process where you are building, talking, and analyzing. And all these three aspects should always come after another one, because you will be building as long as your project uh, on the market. And that's why it's very important to have a conversation with your target audience. So I would like to give you a few tips regarding the market validation. So first of all, will be do your homework. So you need to learn more about your target audience. You need to know more about your target market, where you're going. You need to understand this beforehand, so you know how to approach them, what questions you should ask, and to make sure that you're actually solving a problem on this market. Then you should collect feedback. So you should start having a conversation to validate your idea. You should talk to the people you're going to sell to. Stay flexible. You never know what's going to happen. You never know what kind of feedback you're going to get. So that's why it's very important to be open for changes, because market is changing. There can be different situations, like these days we had COVID coming out, and many projects weren't ready for that at all. So stay flexible, be ready to change and go with the market. Monetize early. It's also important to start monetizing for two reasons. One is, of course, it makes it easier to go through fundraising process, whether you don't even need money, or it makes you more attractive because you're already earning from your project. And second thing would be the feedback from users that are paying is completely different from users that are not paying. And getting a feedback from paid users will be more important for you. So if you can start monetize as early as possible, it will be also good for finding a right product market fit. And don't scale too early. It never helped projects when they start growing from like 5 people to 50 within a year or half a year. It was never a good case. So you should understand that scaling your team, scaling your project also cause a lot of problems in terms of the management, the capacity of your team, because even if you're scaling in a user perspective, if you're like growing from, let's say, 10,000 to 1 million users, you need to make sure that you have enough people to offer customer support. You should have enough people to actually handle all the requests. Of course, at the beginning, maybe you are getting a lot of requests to your email, but that would be impossible if you have thousands of people writing to you every day. So you have to have the systems ready beforehand. That's why it's important to grow organically and scale when you know that you can actually handle this scale. And going to the next step, I would like to summarize everything that I mentioned and cover a step-by-step approach for the market validations that you can keep in mind. And first of all, it's very important to do a preliminary research on your target market and target audience to understand where you're going initially and if the market actually needs your solution. So you should understand what kind of problem you're solving and if this is an important problem. Of course, you might think that your project is so unique, and it might be so unique indeed. But before you go into the market, if there is a problem existing there, people have some alternatives that they used to use before you came to this market. And you need to understand these alternatives, why people use them, and why do they need your project. So the best way would be to find the test market. You can launch in some Reddit community or some university community, depending on your target audience. So you need to make sure that this small community includes your target audience. And you start launching there and you ask people to try your product and provide you feedback. In most of the cases, these people will be happy to help you. So you can collect a lot of feedback and also don't go out too noisy in case you still need to do a lot of changes to your product. So that's why it's important to run the testing. You can choose questionnaire, interview, focus group. There can be many other ways that you can find the best fit for your current project in order to do the testing, to analyze the feedback. And in this way, you can collect as much feedback as possible and actually start learning more about your product. On the next step, you will have to analyze. And I'm not tired to repeat it. You have to analyze, analyze, and analyze. In this way, you can actually know more about the people you are selling to and how this product is actually fitting them. You might see completely different results, and you might end up adding a lot of new features that will be actually available, and that can be the game changer for your project. And after all above mentioned were handled, you can finally go and launch. And you will launch with a product that the market need at the market where people need it. So that will be the ideal scenario for your project. And that's the way how you should go. Of course, if you have our market validated, you eliminate so many difficulties that you can face on the way and that I mentioned beforehand. And of course, your team will still stay motivated. You will still have enough resources to continue. And you will have enough time to launch actually quicker than if you spend a lot of time on your dream product at the very beginning. So always have a conversation with your target audience because these are the people you are selling to. You don't make this project for yourself. You're making it for people you're selling to. So why not going and talk to them and ask about this product? I really hope that was useful, and thanks everyone who were listening to me at this moment. And I will be very happy to answer any questions during a Q&A session. Thanks everyone.
Okay, thanks, Elena, for those clear instructions for tech startups. And we have live streams for several channels. Please remember that you can always drop your questions in comments. And I'm happy to pass the presentation to Igor, CEO and co-founder of SPRO.
Hi, my name is Igor. I'm the CEO of SPRO. I have more than 10 years already of experience in software development. We work a lot with startups. And I think my role here is to talk about mostly how to build that core, which Elena was talking about, and how to approach right with budgeting your software development. Let me share my screen. So 1 second. So Elena told already that for a startup, it's very important to have the vision and understanding what you want to create. So you need to have the vision of, let's say, how you approach delivering your dream product or your dream business idea to your target market, to your ideal customer. That's the understanding of what you need to have. But there is another thing, the flexibility which you need to have to be able to deliver that idea to the customer. As soon as you might have the general vision of, let's say, creating the fintech application for that amount of audience, but at the same time you need to be flexible because market is changing. The auditory might be not might want not exactly what you created, and you need to be super flexible plus understanding what you're creating. And the point here is that where actually startups fail a lot is that software development process is not that much flexible. There is a huge amount of methodologies, like Agile is one of them, how to make the software development agile and super fast. But in reality, anyway, today where we are, software development is a long process, and it's a huge challenge to make it flexible. So I mean, delivering features every day to production to the users, and that features which they want exactly is a huge challenge. And if you're a startup and you are just starting your business, having that dream which you want ideally to create, and starting to creating it and delivering that product in 6 months from now to the market means a failure. If during this time you don't collaborate with your audience while you're creating your product, because creating a product takes time, it's a failure. So you need all the time to collaborate with your audience, which Elena already mentioned, which will bring you success. And at the same time, you need to be quite flexible with creating the product. The big question is how startups should approach the software development. How to create this cycle of creating the product quite small and cost efficient as soon as the startups have an issue with the time and with the money. Every startup in the beginning has the issue of time and money. So if we would ask the question how much it would cost for us to create an application like Revolut, the typical things we should discover for ourselves is that that's the fact that the startups spend most of their money or on marketing or on R&D. And the second fact is that no matter how much money in the seed round you have, you will spend more than 100% of the budget for marketing or for software development. And this is typical that startups, that software development and marketing is very, it's very costly procedure, and you need to spend money on it. And most of the money you have, you will spend directly on this. And the main question, and if we know the fact already that we will spend anyway those money on software development, on marketing. In my case, I will be mostly talking about software development. But if we know that we will spend mostly all our money on software development, it means that that's the fact already, that if we have, for example, the budget, let's say $50,000 or $100 for software development, we'll spend all of them. And the question now is not really how much money it would cost to create the application, let's say like Revolut. as soon as I have the budget limitation. I'm a startup. I have the budget limitation. I can't spend more. The bigger question here is actually how effectively to spend the money on my application to be able to deliver that application which I want to create to the target audience which I have. That's the bigger question, and that's one of the important things when you to consider when you create this the application. Another topic here is that we are like a startup community. We all are spoiled with the great stories, like that the application should be simple, or the first version of the application should be simple. And sometimes we can't find really a difference between a simple application and the first simple version. And for example, let's take the application Revolut. It looks quite simple. It means that it's very simple to create the application like Revolut. And many entrepreneurs think that if the application is simple, that means that it would be quite simple to create it. But you never think about that amount of resources and procedures which startup did to make the application simple. And usually that's a huge amount of resources being taken to do this. So let's go ahead and I will explain more detailedly what I mean. So I suggest to think about R&D and that simplicity which we want to create. So the first version should be quite simple and pure. But what exactly does this mean? Again, we're asking ourselves a question: how much does it take to how much budget should I have to create an application like Revolut? The answer is pretty simple. Revolut funding is $970 million today, according to Crunchbase, and the round A was $6.8 million. So that's the amount of money a startup should consider if the goal is to create the application like Revolut. And if we approach in the software development like this, that means that from the day one we don't have that budget. The software development team will not be able to understand what exactly they need to create. And that would lead us to the budget waste, even though like we have like $100, $100,000 or $50,000 of budget. So all they will be spent on unclear goals definition. The right, even, and we will, at the end of the day, we will even not understand why that kind of simple application like Revolut was not being able to create it with that budget which we had. As soon as creating a Revolut application is not simple because of the amount of amount of resources they spend to create that application that much simple. And the numbers we're looking at, they demonstrate that amount of resources they put it in to create the application this simple. So the simplicity is a result. That's what I'm trying to explain. So what's the right approach here? The right approach is not to spend money on the on something like Revolut. The right approach is like we have our understanding of the market and the product which we want to create, and we need to form our goal for software development the following way. I need to create a digital wallet application which would be used, for example, by students on the campus to pay their bills, let's say for food, for education, for books, and something else. And we have the current goal, let's say. We have the current goal to launch at 1st of September the pilot with the UBS. And this kind of approach will give us the exact understanding of what we are trying to create. So it's a frame of what we are trying to create. So we have an understanding of the product, which is a digital wallet. We have understanding of our client, which is a student. We have a value proposition understanding, which is payments for education, books, and food, and different other activities on the campus. That's the value proposition which we are trying to create. And we have the strict understanding of the goals. Let's say as 1st of September, we need to create we need to launch the pilot. It means that we have that time frame to deliver some amount of functionality which should support our customers in those activities. And on top of that, we also have the understanding of our budget, which we have for this first version of the product. As soon as we are a startup, we have that amount of budget which we consider for ourselves as being able to spend for this activity. That means this is our budget. And this approach will guarantee us that we will be able to hit our goal. Let's say the launch, the pilot with UBS on the 1st September. And we have, and we guarantee ourselves that we the value which we delivered to our customers would be will be inside of the application. So the features which we will create for this pilot will match the expectations of our clients as soon as we put the goal like this, and will be also in our budget. So that's the kind of thinking approach, how you should think about setting the goals for your R&D team. And that also solves the budget issue. Let me switch the slide. So the next error usually startups have when they start to create an applications is that everybody, and most of the startups, let's say, not the startups, but most of the people, most of the entrepreneurs who don't deal day-to-day with the software development, everybody thinks about an application and the software development process as a list of features we want to put into our application. And in reality, it is not like this. In reality, when we start to work, when we start to create an application, we go to the process which looks like this. So it looks like a Gantt diagram. It's a list of features and list of people, a list of team members, and dependencies between people, processes, and features, and market, and something else inside your company, which we need to put everything, which we need to put together in a good plan and deliver this. What it means for us, like as for business owners, it means that we need to consider, when we plan our software development activities, we need to consider that we have not only the list of features which we need to put in, for example, on the 1st September to our application. We also need to consider that we are creating the team. That means that we are hiring people, we are onboarding people. That means that if we hire somebody, let's say we are hiring a team of 5 people. We hire the first person to the team, and then, for example, the backend developer. Then we hire the front-end developer, and he comes into the play in, for example, in 2 weeks. That means that while we have only a backend developer, he doesn't have anybody on the front end working on his tasks. That means that there is a huge dependency between on how to create the features if there is no other person. Or, for example, we need a designer, and designer will be joining the team, for example, in 1 month from now, and we already have a front-end developer. That means that front-end developer today is creating something which we have to redo totally when the designer will be hired. And this is just a typical dependencies which can happen. There is also feature dependencies. Let's say we are creating a login functionality, and we also need to create, for example, a functionality, let's say a personal financial part of functionality, which means that we should have authentication. We can't, for example, work fully with some features inside of that scope of work because we need authentication to be implemented before we work with the personal finance part. And this makes this kind of complexity between features. Let's say we need to create this feature first, and then we need to create another feature which goes after that. Also, there are such activities inside of the team, like collaboration between different departments. Let's say we make an interview of our customers. We discovered some new things which we need to do, and we want to we need our developers team to be engaged in what marketing department discovered and to talk about how that should be implemented ideally. So that means that this would take some time for development departments to generate some ideas and something else. And that's also a dependency. Finally, if we will be not planning our activities with dependencies, we can spend a bunch of time in software development and having no result. As soon as some of the time would be spent on just hiring the team, some of the time would be spent on just communication with different departments, and some of the time would be spent on feature dependencies. And that's a huge thing which you should know about. So you should think of this Gantt diagram as so your software that's how you create the software is not the list of features you have. That's the capacity inside of the team which you have, and how this capacity of the team is able to utilize those amount of features which you have. That's how you should think about this. And we talked about this Gantt diagram and features we should take in and how we should approach it. And we talked about the way of setting up the goals for R&D department. And I think right now it's quite clear of understanding the complexity inside of software development team we have. On top of, let's say that we just creating the software and it's already complicated. We also have these dependencies of team members and forming a team. So that's already complicated. And that's why it's quite important to put the right goals for software development team to understand what they should create. On the first slide here, I was talking about how to set the right goals to the software development team. So that's an example. This generally methodology called SMART. You can read more about this. I'm sure like many heard about this and use it. And this is very efficient when you use this methodology, setting up the goals for software development team. So you communicate the budget, you communicate the timelines, you communicate the expected results, you give as much information as possible about the clients and the market which you have. You give a lot of information about your vision of team and the roles, the compositions, and you also give some access to advisors. So people who can advise how better to do something. So with this approach, the speed of utilization, the features would be much higher. That's the example of how you can set the goals for software development team. And there is also one important thing to consider is that, let's say, the Revolut, or let's say the Airbnb case, which Elena has been talking about before. So the Airbnb or Revolut today is not the Revolut or Airbnb 5 years ago. So there is a startup life cycle. Typically, it's 3 stages. It's the stage research and product development. I mean, mostly like prototype creation. Then there is the stage commercialization when the startup is trying to create the first sales. And then there is the first stage when the startup is growing. So that's how you approach R&D is totally different on those 3 stages. It's totally different because you have different business goals. And very important is understand that you can't approach software development like Revolut, being a startup at the pre-seed stage and doing a prototype. So on the prototype, you should really do your core. You should really do your very pure concept of what you're trying to create. That will bring you flexibility. And that's how your exact goals can be achieved. So build the simple product for today customers which you have, for today activities which you have. You'll be able you will be able to get success. You will be able to have a speed. You will be able to have a flexibility. That's very important. And on the next stage, when you already have the understanding of the customers, you have already the first customers who are using the product, and now your goal is to increase the sales. That's where you need to create the perfect product which your customers will love. They will love to use it. And here you need to approach your software development differently. You already need to think more about how to make our product better, how to make it more stable, and all other things, they comes after this stage. And already on the stage of the growth, you think about other activities like architecture and other things. By the way, this is the matrix which I found during one of the researches which I was doing. This is based on the study of balanced scorecard of Norton and Kaplan. This really demonstrates of startup as a company or as a business, their life cycles, so between different stages. And what I want to show here is that this top thing here, like first two layers, financial and customer perspectives, like actually what we entrepreneurs do, they directly affect on what should be our R&D processes and our R&D goals inside of R&D department. So your R&D department should be as much as possible integrated in what your current business activities. You shouldn't do activities, especially on initial stage, which are not relevant to something what you need today. If today you need a prototype, that means that you need to create a prototype. If today you need to create a pilot version and launch a pilot product with UBS, that means that you need to create only a pilot product with UBS, nothing else. That's very important. And this would give you flexibility. I would say that this would enforce your flexibility. It would enforce your vision and your business approach with the flexibility which your R&D department has. So this is very important. One more important topic is that important to say that during the so most of the VCs they recommend, and this is also my recommendation as well. So during first initial phases for startup, it's totally recommended to keep as much as possible development in-house. For what reason? Because that kind of flexibility which you need. So that's very important to keep everything in-house. And moreover, all the VCs recommendation is to spend as much as possible money on the initial phases on marketing. As soon as you need really to understand your market first, then you need to bring the development after market understanding. For this purpose, better if you want to work with outsourcing providers on the first stage, initial stage, when you create a prototype. If you want to work with outsourcing providers for some reasons, the key aspect here is that you need to outsource only some specific scope of work and very much detailed. Let's say piece of prototype based on market validation, which you need to create. That's how better to approach working with outsourcing providers. On the second stage, when it's already a commercialization stage, and you need to scale the team somehow, and you want to engage the outsourcing providers here, then better to create already. It's better here to work with outsourcing providers like a dedicated team. So you can create a dedicated team and work based on understanding of your yearly or monthly budget. And on the growth stage, when you hardly need to empower your team with the scale, so there you should better plan your. You should work with outsourcing providers based on the yearly budget. So that's just some tips of pricing models, how to work with outsourcing providers. And in this approach, with right setting of the goals, right management of R&D process, and right working with the vendors or its in-house team, that's the way how you would succeed. You will have succeed. You will have a flexibility, and generally the business will be going good. That's my experience. Let's say, which we have working with many startups during all these years. I would be quite open to answer all the questions during Q&A sessions, and generally that's it for right now.
Okay, Igor, thanks a lot for this comprehensive information for R&D planning. I think it was really useful for all of our viewers. So let's start the Q&A section. Please remember that you can leave those questions and comments in the streaming platform that you are using. And I guess we can begin with timing of the projects. There are two questions for Elena and Igor. Let's start with a question for Elena. So from your experience, are there many projects that find a product market fit from the beginning? Like how fast and how long does it take?
I think from my experience, that quite depends on the project, because of course for some teams it will be relatively quick, so they can maybe do it from the first time when they just did some research, they went to the market and it turned out to be the perfect fit for them. For some projects like Weebly, it can take like 18 months. And of course, companies, I would say here that companies should be prepared for finding their product market fit for quite a while, because you cannot know from the very beginning, and it's better always to be prepared for the worst. But I would say that it takes some time, so at least maybe 2 or 3 months to find your product market fit, because when you launch, you start accumulating the feedback, and then you start finally understanding if you're moving in the right direction. Because doing the research is nice. Yes, it's of course you should do it at the beginning. You should prepare. You should kind of learn more information, but you shouldn't spend on like research. I don't know, months. So maybe like 1 month is okay, but not like 2, 3, or 4. You just need to understand the basics, and then go to the market and actually try. So that would be the main idea. So of course, it will take like a few months to find the product market fit. Of course, even collecting the feedback, it's not like being done within a few days. So you have to develop all the methodologies. You need to add some business analytics to your website, or like your application, or any other like product aspects that you use, and then actually start like communicating with your target audience. So I would suggest to be like prepared for the worst, but yeah, there are cases when it can be like from the first shot.
Thanks a lot. Igor, maybe you have like something to add to this question.
I think that it's very important to collaborate with people. So survey is a very effective way. If you want to understand what your customers need, you need to ask them. And better to have somebody, let's say, somebody like an insider on the market, somebody who works in a specific company where you want to sell it. So who can tell you that, specifically and directly, we want this list of features. That would be super helpful. And if you have like 5 people or 3 people like this, and you can mix the opinions, that would be very effectively. And this is something you can do. You can do this, I think, quite quickly. But then, I mean, the survey. But then you will have to spend a few more months, I would say, on actually these cycles. So like you made a survey, you created your hypothesis about that. That's how this should be working. You show this to people. It's usually not like this. Then you repeat it and try other way. So and this is where you can really spend for about like 3 months.
Mm-hmm. Thanks a lot. So another question would be about the R&D planning timing. And the question is, how long does it take to develop the first version of the product?
It's me, right?
Yes.
So typically, so we We suggest the following approach. So the first stage is something like a paperwork. So it can be done. I mean, paperwork, it's when you draw the prototype, how it should look like. This is something that can be done with 2 weeks, let's say. Maximum a month if the product is big. So that's the first stage. And then when you start already coding this product, it may take up to 3 months of creating a product. But if you would be really, if your goal is really to make it quite fast, which is very usually complicated for startups, but really a product could be created overnight with a simple tools. But the only question how you approach it. But generally, if we talk about something like an MVP or POC product, that's several months of work, up to 3 months. If we make a bigger product, that will be maximum 6 months. But ideally, user startup should think about something like 3 months of work.
Thanks a lot. So yeah, I think we are getting this kind of understanding of how long does it take to get the right idea, like to understand the market and how long it's going to take to actually develop the product. So the next question is about estimating the costs. So what are the typical techniques to estimate the cost of the product? I guess it is also for you, Igor, but then we can also ask Elena to add something on it.
The typical technique called decomposition means that you have the huge functionality. I mean, for example, payments, and you decompose it into features, a list of features. For example, entering the cart details. So you or for example, wiring the payment. So you decompose this into a list of features, then you prioritize them and see which exactly features you really want to create. And then you try to optimize amount of features which you have. So this is called decomposition. And when you decompose your big thing into very small things, you really see this plan of list of features which you want.
Thanks a lot. And maybe Elena can add something from the business development perspective about the cost estimations.
Yeah, sure. Of course, like business preparation also will take some time, and of course the costs. And for the teams, I would recommend at the beginning to try to prepare everything with a smaller team, because again, I was already mentioning during my presentation not to scale too early. So the main cost will be here to do the research or to do the preparation, to actually build the model and build our business analytics tools that will be useful for actually collecting the feedback from users in order to implement and advance the product. So I think the team should understand the market very well at the beginning. That will be like a preliminary step that can whether be done by the team, or if the team would like to outsource it, and if they have enough budget, they can also try to outsource it to get kind of like a side opinion. Because I know from like being entrepreneur myself, I know how sometimes it's challenging to understand it for your project when you know so many different aspects. So sometimes having a side opinion very useful, so you can actually like concentrate like on a narrow aspects, on some particular like basic features of your product and move on further. But in terms of the cost of the project, there would be time. So if the team has necessary skills to understand the market, to do the business modeling, the cost will come from the time span. Mostly because if everything is done in house, of course there are no like direct costs. If for example founders and in most cases founders are trying not to pay the salaries to themselves, so it will be more about the time at the beginning, depending of course on their organizational structure and maybe some internal team and salaries. but there will be no like really outsourced costs if a company can do it internally. But they need to understand it that they are able to do it quickly, because if the team will spend a lot of time on all the preparations, we will again end up with time wasted, and there might be a lot of opportunities missing here. So the team should understand how to move on further and know all the methodologies. That's why many teams prefer to have a side opinion, just in order to structure it in a better way and not wasting time on checking like different aspects of their business, and just like having someone who's saying, okay, we concentrate on the core and trying to analyze this core. So we don't spend a lot of time like on looking on different markets, because I know there are a lot of projects that would like to go, let's say, to Asia and go to Europe at the same time. But of course, it's more challenging than just concentrating on one particular market. And that's sometimes when you need to get a side opinion. If the budget is really small, maybe like getting this side opinion from friends or from other like business connections in the field will be, of course, quite important. So I would say that the cost is coming from the team capacity and the time spent on preparation. So it can like again like vary a lot on the project and the needs.
Okay, thanks a lot, Elena, Igor, for answering those questions. And just maybe you have some comments or questions to each other that you would like to add or ask before we finish the event.
Just to comment on here to what Elena said. So this is really important to understand your monthly amount of cash which you monthly burn. So that's the key important thing for startup to measure. And from that amount of money which you monthly burn really depends the cost of your software development. And that list of features which you want to put in depends on that how you utilize them based on the efficiency of your software development team. And taking these two things into account, you can calculate the general cost of your product creation.
I would actually also add here, it's good that you mentioned about the burn rate, because many projects miscalculate the burn rate. That's very important that team is not lying to themselves, because the burn rate is mostly, of course, investors will ask about the burn rate. But the burn rate is also important for a team internally, even they don't want to show it to anyone. Just not to lie to yourself and understand how much cash you have left, because you can't estimate here that, for example, the salaries will be, let's say, like $10,000 for like a few people per month. But it actually can be more because of different taxes or insurance that you have to pay for. So you need to make sure that you understand all these fees, and that you also include some emergency funds in there, because you can have some extra cost all the time. And that's very important.